She proved to be such a nuisance, always obstructing my path. Right up until the bitter end, my husband spat out those words. It made me question if he was truly human at all. He was insufferable, not only as a parent, but as a person. I'm sorry. I will avenge you, I declared, standing before the funeral attendees, reading the letter left by my daughter. As I read, my husband's face turned ashen. What the hell do you think you're doing? My father-in-law's angry voice echoed. The revenge was about to commence. My name is Elma, a 40-year-old housewife. I've been married to Carl for 15 years. We met in high school, becoming classmates in our sophomore year. We started talking after becoming desk mates and grew closer while working together on a school festival project. After the festival ended, he confessed, and we started dating. We continued dating through college. Carl moved out on his own, so I often visited his apartment. After graduation, we both started working and got busy, but we still made time for dates and meals out. Once we both started earning more, we enjoyed traveling during our holidays. I cherished those trips we took while dating. 3 years into our working lives, we decided to get married. We had saved enough for a wedding and had settled into our jobs, so it felt like the right time. Since we had dated since high school, we already knew each other's families, which made meeting the parents and house visits go smoothly. Many people attended our wedding, including our high school classmates, celebrating our union. Afterward, we started our married life, which was full of joy. Even though we'd been together for over 8 years since high school, we felt fresh and excited in our married life. It felt real when my last name changed to his. We were having a smooth marriage. 3 years later, our daughter Rosa was born. "Wow, she looks like an angel, so cute," Carl exclaimed, holding our newborn daughter. "I'll work my butt off to protect our family," he declared. "Thank you, be our rock," I replied. "You can count on me," he assured confidently. With a new member to protect, my husband seemed larger than life and very reliable. After giving birth, I worked part-time in his company. The first reason was to have more time with our child. Raising her was incredibly joyful. Every little milestone, like crawling or walking, was a moment of excitement, and I took countless photos and videos, like any proud parent. When I told Carl, he'd say, "I wish I could have seen that," with a tinge of regret. We spent blissful days playing with our daughter on his days off. As Rosa grew, she became conversational. We loved taking her to different places and letting her have various experiences. We were excited about thinking of her future dreams and the path she would take. But everything changed when Rosa was in the 3rd grade. I was working part-time when suddenly I got a call from the hospital. Rosa had collapsed during class. In a state of panic, I hurried to the hospital. My husband left work early to join me, and together we listened to the doctor's solemn words. That's when the shocking truth hit us like a tidal wave. Our daughter had a rare disease. Depending on the treatment, she probably had about a year to live, the doctor explained. My mind went blank. My daughter was burdened with an incurable illness. All that awaited us was the use of medication to ease the symptoms, with no guarantee of halting the relentless progression of the disease. We were devastated, grappling with the harsh reality of why such a small child had to endure this cruel fate. As time passed, her condition worsened. 6 months later, walking became a challenge, and she could no longer attend school. Our days were consumed by hospital visits and lying in bed at home. Gradually, she became bedridden. I had to quit my part-time job to care for her full-time. It was a necessary sacrifice, as anything could happen while I was away. Supporting her became our top priority. Around this time, my husband's demeanor underwent a drastic change. He easily fell into bad moods, and the atmosphere at home grew tense. When I welcomed him home with dinner, he'd respond with irritation, questioning my choice of fish. His complaints about every little thing persisted. The house felt peaceful and calm when it was just my daughter and me, but anxiety crept in whenever he was around. His irritability escalated, and he started coming home late, citing overtime work. Strangely, I felt relief when he stayed out late. The mental exhaustion lifted. Yet I couldn't shake the loneliness. He had stopped caring about our daughter's well-being. When I implored him to talk to her more, he dismissed it, claiming fatigue and declaring that taking care of her during the day was enough. 2 years had passed since her diagnosis, and she continued to fight against her illness with unwavering spirit. Despite her strength, my husband refused to acknowledge her efforts. Instead, his overtime increased, and he started staying out overnight without a message to me. The days without him felt strangely comfortable, even when he was home. Our interactions were minimal, and he seemed to sense the tension, avoiding unnecessary conversations. Strangely, my daughter, in the midst of her struggle, noticed the growing distance between us. "Did you and Dad fall out?" she asked one day. "You hardly ever talk when you're together, right?" "Most of the time." I could hear voices, and it sounded like they were arguing. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to worry you, but it's okay. We're not on bad terms, really. Yes, true, Dad's just really busy with work, so when he's home, he's resting. That's why I don't talk to him much so he can get some rest." I reassured our daughter. "Oh, I see," she responded, a little relieved but still seeming sad that her dad wasn't talking to her much. "Did Dad start to dislike me after I got sick?" she asked with a hint of worry. "That's not true at all. A parent can't hate their child. Like I said, he's just busy with work. Don't worry, he doesn't hate you, okay?" I comforted her. After putting our daughter to bed and leaving her room, I sighed. Why am I causing her to worry like this? She's in a life or death situation, and I'm troubling her with this. Gathering my courage, I spoke to my husband when he came home. "Hey, Rosa is feeling lonely. She's wondering if you started to dislike her after she got sick," I admitted. My husband, who had been listening reluctantly, seemed surprised that our daughter would say such a thing and finally looked at me. "Yes, she did. So please, even if it's just a little, talk to her. She's lived past the life expectancy she was given, so it wouldn't be strange if we lost her anytime. Let's make sure neither of you has any regrets, okay?" I pleaded. "I got it," he said begrudgingly and in a low voice. The next day, being Sunday, I deliberately created time for just my husband and daughter to be together. I went out to the store for a couple of hours. When I returned home, I asked him, "Did you get to talk to Rosa?" He replied, "Yeah, we talked about various things." I was glad if it was for our daughter's sake, but then my husband started to get ready to go out. "Are you going somewhere?" I inquired. "Yeah, I'm going out to eat with a friend. Why don't we all have dinner together as a family?" I suggested. "Ah, I've been invited, so I can't say no. I've done my part by talking to Rosa. It's time for you to let me go." Saying that, he left the house, leaving me puzzled. What does he mean by "let me go"? I felt like nothing had been resolved. Maybe my husband was just going through the motions out of obligation. At that moment, I decided to stop expecting anything from him. It was enough if I cherished our daughter. That's what I thought. I focused more on making conversation with her. Then, one day, my husband came home in a bad mood. "Hey, get dinner ready quickly," he demanded. I had stopped trying to say anything to my husband, so I prepared dinner, put it in front of him, and was about to go to our daughter's room when he stopped me. "Hey, pack a week's worth of clothes in the duffel bag. I've got a business trip. Make sure you pack all the essentials, like the razor too." After saying that, he went to take a bath without even clearing his dishes. Why do I have to do this? But surely if the bag wasn't packed by the time he got out of the bath, he would get pretty mad, and if he raised his voice, it would worry our daughter. If she woke up, I sighed and went into his room to pack the clothes into the duffel bag. Well, it's a relief. He'll be gone on a business trip for a week. With him gone, I can relax. I packed the bag and left it in his room. The next morning, my husband left without thanking me or saying anything. That annoyed me, but I decided to let myself do as I pleased. First, I called my parents to come and see our daughter. If my husband is away for a week, my folks can stay over without any worry. They seemed torn, happy to see their granddaughter, but saddened to see her bedridden. They were all smiles in front of her. But once she fell asleep, Their faces were filled with pain and loneliness. "It really is unfair of God," they said. "Why couldn't it be an old-timer like me instead of a good kid like Rosa?" My parents stayed until the very last minute before my husband was due back. As time went on, Rosa's condition worsened, and she had to be hospitalized. I was gripped with fear that the inevitable might be near. I visited her in the hospital every day, but my husband never came. Instead, when he returned home early, he sent angry messages on WhatsApp, upset about dinner not being ready. At this point, beyond sighing, I thought it might be better without a husband who couldn't cherish his own daughter. However, his work, painful as it was to admit, allowed me these moments with her. Not only my parents but also my in-laws came to visit her often at the hospital. Rosa always seemed happy when someone came to see her. We even celebrated her 12th birthday in the hospital room, where the nurses prepared a cake, and we all celebrated together. But about a month after her birthday, Rosa's condition worsened, and she passed away. I was devastated, breaking down in tears. The reality shattered my emotions. My parents tried to comfort me, but they ended up crying with me. Still, we had to see Rosa off properly. Together with my parents, I arranged and prepared for the funeral. There were things I had to do, all for Rosa. I managed to hold back my tears and proceed with the funeral arrangements. We arrived at the funeral parlor early before the other mourners. My husband, irritable about having to get up early after coming back from his business trip the day before, was infuriating. He hadn't been reachable when Rosa passed away, and he had the gall to say, "I was on a business trip. Even if you had contacted me, I could have made it back." He tried to light a cigarette in frustration. "Go to the smoking area, please," I said sharply. Tutting, he looked irritated. After I called him out, standing by the coffin on his way to smoke, he said something awful to our sleeping daughter. "You were such a pain, always in my way, right to the end." My husband spat out these cruel words as if they were nothing. Is he really human? He was the worst, not just as a parent, but as a person. I was rendered speechless by the horrible things he said. I couldn't move from the spot until my husband walked towards the smoking area. When I came to, I went straight to the coffin. "I'm sorry. I will take revenge in your place," I told my daughter, steeling myself with determination. I could never forgive him. Then the funeral began. Unbelievably, my husband, who had just said such terrible things, pretended to cry in front of the relatives, saying Rosa's name as tears streamed down his face. I knew it was an act because I saw him apply eye drops before walking up to the coffin. The relatives, not knowing any better, misunderstood and started crying too. Unforgivable. I would reveal his true nature no matter what. As the funeral was drawing to a close, it was time to read the letter left by my daughter. "What? There's a letter." My husband was clearly surprised, not having known about it. "Yes, there is. I have to properly convey the words she left behind to everyone." I stood before the funeral attendees and began to read my daughter's letter aloud at the microphone. The letter was mostly words of gratitude to me for the care I had given her. With each word I read, tears came and I choked up. The relatives also started to cry along. But as I got to the part about my husband, I took a deep breath. "To Dad," I read, as the tears naturally stopped. "Against Mom, who was always by my side. You seemed to avoid coming home as if you were avoiding us. Even when you came home, all I could hear was your voice yelling at her in my room. Dad used to make time to play with me when I was little, taking me on drives to all sorts of places. But after I got sick and became bedridden, Dad seemed like a completely different person. Mom always pretended to be strong in front of me, but I could tell she was really struggling with how Dad was behaving. It hurt me, thinking maybe it was my fault things turned out this way. But it seems that wasn't the case. Remember the day Mom went shopping, and it was just Dad and me at home. You came to my room and talked to me. Then, maybe because Mom asked you to, I was so happy. It felt like the old Dad had come back. But then, thinking I was asleep, you took the phone call. You were talking to a woman. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I know everything. You were planning a week-long trip. Did you enjoy the Disney trip you went on behind our backs? And you told that woman on the phone that you loved her. As I read my daughter's letter aloud, the room buzzed with tension. My husband stood there, pale as a ghost. What the hell are you doing? My father-in-law's angry voice boomed. The revenge had begun. My husband just stood there, speechless, stuttering. Ah! My father-in-law grabbed him by the collar and yelled, "You fool!" before striking him across the face. My husband, staggering, denied the affair, saying, "It's not what it looks like. There must be some mistake." What's the mistake? Rosa would never lie, but I haven't had an affair. My husband stuck to his denials, holding the microphone. I've already caught you. Stop with the futile resistance. Yes, I had seen my daughter's letter beforehand and hired a private investigator. I had gathered plenty of evidence of my husband's affair. I showed the photo on my smartphone to everyone at the funeral. All the relatives attending glared at my husband. How could you go on an affair trip when your own child's life was hanging by a thread? You're finished as a human being. I didn't raise you to be such a terrible adult. Mom, Dad, you're no son of ours anymore. We disown you. My husband just collapsed on the spot, trying to escape the pain. I didn't want to face the reality that my daughter had become like that. What are you even saying? That's no excuse for having an affair. And if that were true, you would have spent more time with Rosa. Don't lie now when we've come so far. And I heard from your parents. You were asking them for money for Rosa's medical expenses because it was so costly. I never heard a word about it. That means you were using the money your parents sent for your own pleasure, right? You exploited your daughter's illness to collect money and have an affair, didn't you? Don't give me that. How dare you do such low things and then talk about suffering? Rosa was the one suffering the most, fighting desperately to survive her illness. To have a father like you, Rosa was the one to be pitied. You're not wanted at this funeral. Get out of here right now. I shouted at my husband with all my might. He fell on his butt, let out a small yelp, and then hurriedly ran away from the place. After that, I reset and continued with my daughter's funeral. When it was over, my in-laws apologized deeply and offered to help with the divorce and alimony in any way they could. I proceeded with the divorce and demanded alimony through a lawyer introduced by my father-in-law. But that wasn't enough for me. I took the house my husband had bought and also told everyone at his workplace about what he had done. My ex-husband, who had made it to the position of manager, quickly lost all credibility at the company. He was demoted and sent to work in a remote location. He asked his affair partner to come with him, but she promptly dumped him, saying she had no interest in a man without money. In the end, to his affair partner, my ex-husband was just a rich plaything. My ex-husband was abandoned by his parents and relatives, left to work alone in a distant place, living a lonely life in his house. It's all what he deserves, and honestly, I'd like to beat him up to my heart's content if I could. Meanwhile, I sold the house I got from my ex-husband and moved back to my parents' house. With the alimony from my ex-husband and his affair partner, I had a considerable amount of money. I didn't feel like working for a while after my daughter passed away, but gradually, I started to think more positively and began working part-time at a cafe near my parents' house. Mom's homemade cake. Rosa loved it so much. I remember my daughter saying that. Now, I bake sweets every day while working at the cafe and honing my pastry skills. I hope to one day serve my own creations on the menu, and just like how my daughter was happy eating my cake, I want to see someone else smiling while eating my cake. For my daughter's sake, I have to live my life to the fullest. With that thought, I put my all into working towards my dream. Today, thank you for watching the video all the way to the end. If you resonated with the content, please leave a positive rating and a comment.